Put your mic on the end. Oh, you switch it off.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Ian Wingfield. I'm the chair of the committee, and before we start the meeting, I've just got a few housekeeping announcements to make. There are no planned fire alarm tests this evening. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave by the nearest fire exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street. Council security staff will be available to direct you. The public toilets are located off the main reception area. Please switch your mobile phone to silent whilst in the meeting room. The meeting is being live streamed to Southwark Council YouTube channel via the Zoom platform. A recording of the meeting will also be viewable on YouTube once the meeting has finished. May I remind members to raise your hand if you wish to speak, and please wait until I've given you permission to speak before contributing. Members of the public are welcome to record, screenshot or tweet the public proceedings of the meeting. A copy of the council's protocol for reporting and filming is available on the Southwark website. All those are interested. Okay, so if we move to the agenda items, firstly, apologies. I have received apologies for absence from councillors Victor Chamberlain, Sunny Lamb, and Chloe Tomlinson, who just phoned. She's got a migraine, unfortunately, and also Jonathan Clay, who's a new parent cooperative governor member. Is that correct, Everton? Yeah. Okay, which diocese is he? Oh, he's a parent governor, isn't he? Sorry. Are there any more apologies for absence? I don't think so. No. Confirmation of voting members. I'll just go around the room and please introduce yourselves when I call your name. I'll start with my vice chair, Councillor Von Visa.
Thank you, Chair. Irina Von Visa, Vice Chair and Liberal Democrat Councillor for Borough and Bankside.
Thank you. Councillor Abacha.
Good evening, Councillor Abacha, Chair of Health and Social Scrutiny.
And welcome to Councillor Dalton, who's reserving for Councillor Lamb.
Evening, everyone. Councillor Sam Dalton, Councillor for London Bridge and West Bermondsey.
Councillor Cumbo.
Councillor Ellie Cumbo, Ward Councillor in St Giles and Chair of the Housing and Community Safety Commission.
Thank you. Councillor Hartley.
Thank you, Chair. John Hartley, Councillor for Dulwich Hill.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Johnson, Shawsell Ward, Labour.
Thank you. Councillor Newens.
Councillor Morgan Newens, Labour Councillor for Dulwich Village.
You sure?
And Chair of the, I feel that I need to introduce my additional scrutiny role and Chair of the Environment Community Engagement Scrutiny Commission.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, we may see later. And Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Jane Salmon, Surrey Docks Councillor.
Here for Councillor Chamberlain.
Here for Councillor Chamberlain, Chair.
Let's not forget him. And we've got the education cooperative members that are present. Martin.
Martin Bretnell, Anglican Diocese of Southwark.
Marcin.
Marcin Godziński, I am parent governor representative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as this is the start of the new municipal year, I welcome all the new members to the committee. And can I just check that everybody has sight of the relevant papers, whether physically in paper form or on the internet? So we've got the main agenda, supplemental agenda number 1, and the motion on fixing the Met. Has everybody got copies of those? Thank you very much. Great. Okay, item 2, notification of any items of business which Chair deems urgent. There were no additional late items, not on the agenda. The minutes of the meeting of the 11th of January, the 1st of March, and the 24th of April are contained in supplemental agenda number 2. What was supplemental agenda number 1, Everton?
That's the case.
Oh, of course, yes, okay. All right, okay, yes. I knew I was missing something there. Thank you. Right. Let's move to agenda item number 3, disclosure of interest and dispensations. Does any member wish to declare an interest or dispensation in respect of any item on the agenda tonight? No. Thank you very much. Item 4, minutes. Can we agree the minutes of the various meetings? I'm going to go through them one by one as a true record. So firstly, we have the 5th of December. 5th of December last year. Last year. Almost.
I think I was absent.
Thank you. The 24th of January. Okay. Thank you very much. The 20th of May. Yeah, sorry, I'll get to it. It's just the order that they're presented in the papers. 20th of May, is that agreed? Thank you. Now, moving on to supplemental agenda number 2, the minutes from the 11th of January.
Yes.
Thank you. From the 1st of March.
Yes.
And from the 24th of April.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's actually what we decided. We decided to bring it back to a future.
Yes, we'll come on to that when we get to the item. Did you want to say anything about that or not?
I'm happy to check the record, and if you'd like that to be checked.
Yeah, I mean it's here, but it's not here. Yeah, and I'll explain later if I can put it that way.
I think I know where you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. But thanks for pointing that out. Right. Right, so we've cleared all the minutes. There'll be nothing for Councillor Chamberlain to talk about at the next meeting, but anyway. Wishful thinking. Item 5, Overview and Scrutiny Committee and Commission Work Programmes 2023 to 2024. As you know, we usually go through the work programmes for not just this committee, but for the 4 commissions. It's something which is required in accordance with the council's constitution. So what I intend to do is just quickly go through our standing items that we have to consider every year. That's written into the constitution, and some other ones which have come up during the year. And then I'll just talk to the 4 commission chairs just to talk about their individual work programmes. Just the caveat that obviously this isn't a definitive list. Whatever we say or agree this evening, it can be supplemented and amended during the course of the year, but it's really just to give a flavour between ourselves and also to the wider public, those issues that we will be discussing this next 12 months. So in relation to OSC, the standing items that we have, which are written in the council's constitution, are firstly the council delivery plan performance monitoring, which you know we do on an annual basis, the climate emergency performance monitoring, which we have been looking at to a certain extent quite thoroughly over the last 12 months, and as I say, we will be this year as well. The budget setting process for next year's budget, which is 2024 to 25. We also look at the annual workforce strategy of the council, so that will be coming up too. In relation to pre-decision scrutiny issues, We have, which has been with us since October, if I remember rightly, the Southwark Stands Together Refresh and Southwark Equality Framework. Again, that's something in the council's constitution that we are required to investigate every year. So that will definitely be on our agenda for the next 12 months. Now, arising out of the reviews that we did last year, there was a number of points. A lot of them are budget related, but there's others which are specific about other aspects that we consider. The first one, which arose out of our consideration of the process concerning Maydew House, we made a recommendation there that we would try and establish from the evidence that was given to the OSC meeting procedures that would prevent such a situation from occurring in the future. So it's something I'm sure we're all keen to bottom out as quickly as possible. So that will definitely be coming forward. Regeneration, it's a bit, although it's specified in the council constitution again, it's really, I guess, individual areas which are being regenerated at the moment rather than the whole of the borough, so to speak. So I guess it would be consideration of particular schemes as we progress during the year. Certainly with the Old Kent Road as a key scheme, which is on the horizon, if that's the best description. We've also required to consider the improvement of customer services within the council. It's something that we did consider last year in regard to housing repairs. Again, depending on what the chair of the commission, housing commission says, it might be something that we divvy up together, or it might be something which may be devolved to the housing commission to look at more thoroughly, but we'll have that discussion later. Arising out of the consideration of the budget last year, there were a number of specific elements that we wanted to look at this coming year. One was the Elections Act and the provisions of the Elections Act, in particular, the increase in communication costs and workload of the electoral services to ensure that voters in this borough are informed of changes to the Election Act. They're brought in by the Election Act, such as voter ID, going to polling stations, etc. So that's something which will be coming back to us. Again, managing the constitutional governance changes coming from new legislation, such as the Health and Social Care Act, and that's something I'm sure that the Health Commission will want to look at in particular. Sorry, Everton's hovering over me. Sorry.
Both lines 401 and 402 relate to what you're about to read out next.
Yes, quite. Yes, and sorry, both of these also relate to the use of the voluntary sector as a commission service to deliver the work that the council has committed to these areas. So again, it'll be looking at those aspects in conjunction with the voluntary sector. We also wanted to look at having quarterly updates to be provided in relation to the increase in the bulky waste charge, just to keep our eye on performance levels there, take up, etc., and I'm sure associated issues such as potential fly tipping and other things. We also, so that was also in connection with the voluntary sector, was to give them assistance. Was see if assistance could be given to alleviate any excessive inflationary pressures that have been passed on to the voluntary sector. And again, that's something that we will get further information on as the year goes on. And then, sorry, yeah, we said we'd also come back with a review on the mayor's office and the budget and operations surrounding that office. And the capital budget refresh, a report will be presented to OSC in due course. So those, oh, sorry, whoops, yes, I turn over the page, does help. The other thing in relation to the budget was the temporary accommodation budget. We said that we would revisit this and form recommendations on the basis of that scrutiny. So that is another major thing that we will be looking at. And then, is this a separate thing altogether, or is that related to that?
It was just the background.
Oh, it's just the background to it. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so from my perspective, that's where we are with the main committee. I'm also aware that Councillor Von Wiese has circulated a work programme of issues. Perhaps you'd like to talk to these as well.
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Chair. So there were a few things that we would like to have, not necessarily in this order of priority or indeed chronology, but there's complaints and legal action. I think this follows on from work that has been done before, but maybe we should have a closer eye really on this, and we weren't quite sure who was responsible in the council services, but just to have a regular update on how many complaints and maybe a sort of vague idea of the topics that came up, and also how many legal settlements there are and how much that costs taxpayers here. So that's the first one. The second one, contract management, and that is mainly public procurement. To keep an eye on this. There is, of course, also a wider problem with the potentially impending boycott ban and all of these things. But I think what we wanted for this year in particular is to just look at what improvements could be made in terms of the quality and efficiency, criteria for value for money, etc. And we would love to invite for this purpose, I think it is Elaine McClester, who's the head of procurement. In-house leisure service, this is the ensuring of the Southwark leisure centres, where, you know, we note that this is something that the council has taken back, and we were worried that somebody should have a sort of basic oversight over the day-to-day management. Jane knows a lot more about it, so maybe do you want to say a word why we wanted this on the work programme in particular?
Thank you. Yes, it was basically because it's an enormous undertaking to pull them back in-house, and it seems right to monitor how it's going. It could be going beautifully, it could be going swimmingly, but there is a part of me that worries about maintenance of equipment and what we took over, because I'm not saying anything about taking it back in-house. I think that's absolutely right, but we must stay on top of it, because it could be quite a money pit if we're not on top of everything that's going on. So I'm not saying immediately, because I think they need time. But what I'm thinking is maybe 9 months down, 10 months down, when they've had some time to settle, everybody who's newly employed knows all the new rules and regulations that we might want to impose, and then start talking about maintenance and costs and topics to do with that. Does that sound right? The only thing I'm not sure is whose committee it would go to. I'm not quite sure. Does it go to environment? Is the leisure side on environment now?
Well, we can have
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. It would go to that committee. I think it makes sense. I'm sure everybody would think that's okay.
Thank you. The next topic, air quality, maybe not so much from the causation perspective, but from the impact and mitigation perspective. We are very worried about the impact on health, notably on children in schools. What can be done to mitigate these effects? And how could we potentially target health screenings for those people who are most affected by the poor air quality? And of course, I know that, you know, the council is trying to do something about the main causes, traffic, etc. But I think we should look at this holistically, and particularly in terms of schools and health of children in schools. And we would like to invite, for that reason, we would like to invite Councillor Kutu to speak to us about this and others who are interested. CCTV, major issue, at least in my inbox. I've loads and loads of residents who have complained that they have desperately tried to get the council to install CCTV cameras, particularly in hotspots for drugs-related crime inside of council estates. But also in public spaces, and the council said no on the ground of costs, and we were wondering whether that is a wise decision given the considerable costs related to the crime that could be prevented through more CCTV cameras, be it static or be it indeed mobile. And apparently residents were told that the mobile ones cost 10 grand per week or something like that, and therefore their requests were denied. So we would like to just have a closer look. Is there something we can do? Is maybe a static camera better than no camera at all? And what's the cost benefit analysis here? The other two, I'm not sure whether they will be here or potentially at other scrutiny committees, but we know that there has been a massive increase in mooring fees in Surrey docks.
Yeah.
Thank you. In Surrey docks for houseboats. So I'm not sure whether it's a housing issue or whether it's indeed an issue for this committee, and I understand it's come to this committee before.
Inadvertently, but yes.
Inadvertently or otherwise. And then the final one is that I think we've been talking last term already about what can be done to look at how we can help traders and markets in times of high inflation and cost of energy. Again, whether that goes to local economy or whether it should come here because of its importance, this is an ongoing emergency situation, and I think we risk losing some of our markets in Southwark. That was basically it. I had a few other points which I think will probably need to go to housing, particularly in terms of housing allocation and use of temporary accommodation. But I will happily defer that to housing if that's something that will be discussed there. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've already indicated temporary accommodations coming here. So I think we can cross that one off the list. If we can just go through what Councillor von Wieser's just proposed before we move on to the commissions. Certainly, I think, as you say, complaints and legal action, I don't think that's any problem coming here. Similarly with contract management, I don't think there's any problem with that coming here. In-house leisure services, I think you mentioned perhaps it should go to the Environment Commission, but I just wanted to get Councillor Newen's take on that first.
I can say that we do have plans to hear to have a session with the cabinet member, Councillor Rose, whose portfolio includes the leisure service.
Yeah.
But in terms of a big, and certainly therefore that would be an area to be scrutinised through that process, rather than sort of conducting any kind of weightier review into it.
Sure. No, I think there's certain important aspects of it was noticeable to me as a user that certain facilities weren't being maintained in the run up to the handover and back to the council. So I should imagine the council budget on maintenance and getting new stock in has probably gone up through the roof to begin with. But anyway, Councillor Cumber.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to some of the ideas that have been aired, I want to say I was particularly supportive of the suggestion for firstly complaints and legal action. Perhaps that's just very on brand for me, but I do think it gives us that sort of that cross-cutting picture of where there are issues that we could be preventing from escalating. And secondly, I do think there is a case for in-house leisure to come here after the Commission has satisfied itself, simply because it was a major manifesto pledge, and it does feel to me as though OSC is the obvious place to look at those really high-profile commitments. So those in particular, I thought could be good additions to the plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, you know, I'm trying not to duplicate discussions as much as possible, but I guess if the Commission looks at it first, and then we can have a report from the Commission to come back, because you know we did consider the in-house proposals before they were enacted by Cabinet, so we have got a legacy on this to a certain extent. Sorry, Councillor News.
I mean, I was going to suggest, and I agree with Councillor Cumbo, that in terms of a sort of weightier investigation specifically of the leisure contract, I think that is very much something which I think would be appropriate here. As I say, I wouldn't anticipate the Commission, the Environment Scrutiny Commission, spending so much time specifically on the leisure element, given the sort of other portfolio items included in Councillor Rose's remit. So I think I completely agree with Councillor Cumbo's comments on that.
Yeah, it's not so much a contract anymore as the provision of a council service. So, well, I know you're going to be pretty chock-a-block with those other environmental issues because they're equally important, as we're all aware. So perhaps it should come here then and not go to the Commission.
I mean, I would agree with that. As I say, we will be hearing from Councillor Rose, but on a number of elements within her portfolio. So yes, this would be one of them. We would touch on it, but not in great depth.
Okay, that'll come here. Was there anything else? No. Okay. Sorry. Again, you mentioned from a health perspective. I just wondered, Suzanne, is that something you think the Health Commission could pick up and look at?
Looking at this, if it's a particular area and we're looking at a particular cause of the pollution, then I think the health will be able to pick it up. But because this, I think they are mostly talking about pollution on the street, cars, barbecue, smoke, and all that, might not really be under health.
Did you want to elaborate a bit more exactly what you were trying to get at with this air quality thing? Was it more health or
it's really mainly from a health perspective, how, for example, we measure the quality of air around schools, how children are affected who are suffering from asthma. So it's definitely borough-wide, and it's definitely, although of course there are hotspots, but it's mainly pollution through traffic that has a direct impact on pulmonary and other health, but also for the elderly, of course.
Okay, Councillor Hartley.
I wonder whether we might be better off handling air quality from the mitigation side. We're going to be looking at a variety of solutions from transport, from health partners, from across the council and from partners. What they're doing to tackle air quality is what I think we probably want to be focusing on. I don't think there's anybody here who thinks that we've got great air quality in Southwark and we don't need to improve it. So the figures of how it's going about, I think, are interesting, but surely we'll be looking at that as part of what we're then doing to try and fix it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Councillor News, will your commission be touching on these issues at all?
I think something like air quality obviously is a recurring issue. We have looked at it in the past, in the course of the past year. One of the elements certainly that I do intend to include in the work programme for the coming year would touch upon certainly the Streets for People strategy, which clearly also has is related to this topic. And in actual fact, we will be completing at the first meeting of the Commission the review that we carried out last year into sustainable freight, which also touches on this issue. I think, I mean, so yes, I think it does absolutely come into the area of discussion of the Environment Scrutiny Commission. I would also argue, of course, though, it is absolutely a key health issue. And if you get to the point of looking at the health inequalities around associated to air quality, then I think then it sort of, you know, I'm very happy to look at it, but I think it is obviously a very big issue, and I think it does extend across the board into the perhaps the areas of the other commission as well. But I think perhaps, I mean, can I suggest maybe that we discuss that? I can discuss that with Councillor Abacha. Exactly how to
Sure.
sort of divide this.
I think just going back to the point that Councillor Hartley made, I think it's really the measures of mitigation you're looking at, isn't it? So it would be more rather than the health side. Obviously, the impact will be on health, but it's more the practical measures that could be taken on the environmental side.
It needs to be both. Sorry,
Yeah.
I think by its very nature, it needs to be tackled from both ends.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but you know, all these issues are cross-cutting, but we need to, you know, they need to go somewhere because they can't, depending on what the primary focus is, and if the primary focus is mitigation, then I think it would sit more readily with environment.
It clearly sits with environment, but it is cross-cutting. And I agree with Councillor Von Wiese that it ideally would be tackled from both perspectives. I think specifically the sustainable freight review actually looks at this in some depth, but I think that there are other elements to it.
All right. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it then between both of you. So I think that's the best way forward. Otherwise, we'll be here till the cows come home. Okay. CCTV. I think this is probably something which is both housing and crime prevention. So I think that would sit with the Housing Commission, don't you think?
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't be supportive at the moment of making this an item unto itself. It does seem to be a suggestion that the council ought to do something that it isn't, and therefore, in that sense, it's not obvious that scrutiny is the best way of looking at it because it's not happening. I'm more than happy to hear more on that from those proposing, but it seems to me as though it's a set of separate suggestions for different parts of the borough that there ought to be more CCTV, and those to me feel like operational and indeed budgetary considerations for the council.
Yes, indeed, budgetary. I mean, I think what we need to look at is a cost benefit analysis that the council needs to undertake, and I would like to see that analysis when they make decisions to decline CCTV. That was the idea. Can we get them to, you know, provide us with some form of data-based analysis?
I mean, it's primarily on council estates. That's what you're referring to in this paper. So it's really an HRA matter. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
I just wonder whether Irene had missed Ellie's point that I mean, I don't want to be flippant, but we could do the scrutiny for this right now. Would it be nice if the council could provide more of these cameras? Yes. Does it have the money to do so? No. You know, we're going to go potentially in depth into something that's relatively simple. I think we all understand that it would be nice, but we all know the state of the council's finances.
I think let's park it for the moment and let's see what your commission work program shapes up to be in a minute, and we'll come back to it then. Mooring fees. You said here potentially a housing issue. You don't mean that in terms of the HRA, do you? You mean in terms of people's housing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because I mean, from what I understand, there was a formula for these increases, which all the residents there have been party to for some time. It's been going on for a number of years, and there was a scale, escalating scale, and so that's probably I'm just speaking on the hoof here, but that was my understanding of it, because it did come to the committee. I think it was my first meeting because it was a hangover from the election before. So that's how far back it's going. If anything, it's a budgetary issue, and it would be under the leisure environment department, wouldn't it? I think
They strangely fall. I think you might be right. I think it's strangely fall. The only thing is, it's disproportionate. So if you've got one of the boats, if you compared it to someone living in a 1-bedroom flat, the amount they pay compared to the person on the 1-bedroom flat is massive. And they would like to understand the formula better, because it just goes on and on and on. It just never stops increasing. It's far, far higher than anything that anyone on dry land would be paying, and they can't quite understand why the formula is as tough as it is. And I think they'd like to speak to officers and be heard, because they just can't go on forever. And it is a unique feature, I know, and they are different people from others.
sure.
But they're getting the feeling of being cash cows, and trust me, living on a boat isn't a luxury.
Well,
It really isn't.
depends
It's
what
a
boat.
choice, but it isn't a luxury.
Yeah.
And it's being
yeah.
charged as if it's some sort of luxury.
Sure. I have a feeling this is set in line with the annual budget. So it's really a budgetary issue, right? Because I think their increases come in line with the other increases on an annual basis. Well, so what I would suggest is that when we have consideration, hopefully we'll be looking at the budget early on, in the autumn. So I suggest it's factored into that, our discussions then. It would appear to be more appropriate that we take it as part of that. I think bringing them in just on that specific, as much as we'd love to hear them, given everything else that we've got to consider, I think would be a rather precious take on our time. But I think through the budgetary process, I think we can factor it in there.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Traders and markets. Again, I suppose this would fall really with the local economy commission, and it's convenient the chair isn't here this evening, so perhaps we could refer it to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine by me.
Okay, jolly good, great. Fine, okay, that's done that. So let's move then to the individual commission chairs. I'll deal with Councillor Tomlinson's first, because she's as I say, she's unwell, and can't be with us. Has everybody been given this paper? Yes. Okay. So as you see on the appendix there, there's the two issues on the first page. On the first one in relation to community wealth building. And then the second issue is school amalgamations and closure in Southwark. And then over the page, you'll see that she's programmed in falling school roles, the wealth building, community wealth building again, planning processes and policies for Southwark businesses. Southwark stands together, particularly focusing on benefits for BAME, school and staff, and an update on the Children's Safeguarding Partnership in Southwark. So that's for people's notice and edification. Let's move on now to Councillor Newens is next on my list.
Yeah, to give a brief outline, and I apologise, I haven't submitted this to you in writing, although I have. So I think it's probably already been published. So the main thrust of the work that we do this year is to be on biodiversity, and that will look to a degree at our curbside strategy, at our trees strategy, at how we develop biodiversity in our parks and other green spaces, also looking at community gardening and urban food production, possibly with a little bit of a look also at some of the work that's been done by the Land Commission. But on that sort of area, I think certainly a part of that will be also on the way the council uses herbicides and pesticides and the impact of that.
Yep.
And looking how other boroughs, particularly London boroughs, have dealt with those issues as well. So sort of as a sort of umbrella topic, I think sort of around biodiversity. And then in addition to that, as already mentioned, we will be completing the review on sustainable freight, which will cover some of the air quality or the causes of poor air quality, certainly, and the way that we can mitigate the impact of that. And we do expect to hear from Councillor McCash and Councillor Rose, and perhaps others too. Watch this space. Thanks.
That's a very concise agenda. Councillor Batcher, I'll go next, please.
So we've got our work program on reviewing and on topics. We have two reviews. One of the reviews, we're going to assess public toilets. There's concern that they don't have enough public toilets around, and especially for people with mobility. The second review will be on adult safeguarding, how we can define a better protect for vulnerable adults care and also for pay staffs. So this came up because we have a lot of NHS nurses who are being accused of maltreating the patients, and they don't have a voice to stand on. Then the next one will be on the topics. So we want to look at access to dental care. And again, a lot of NHS dental are closing down. So it's just leaving you with the private ones. The next topic will be the blue badge application. We're going to try and check the process and the criteria, because a lot of people are complaining that the form is so bulk and they can't fill it and they don't even get the blue badge. And then the next topic is on drug and alcohol. So we're going to try and look into Southwark for we've got children, adults who are being influenced by drug and alcohol. So that's another point we want to check. And then the last topic will be on the pain clinic management. People are also complaining that they are being referred to pain clinic and they are not really being attended to properly. The time they're being given, it's too long for them to wait. And when they get back to the pain clinic, they still refer them back to their GP instead of dealing with them appropriately.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Campbell, please.
Thank you, Chair. The two main items that we intend to look at in respect of housing this year are the new allocations and lettings scheme that will be championed by Councillor Leo Pollock as Deputy Cabinet Member. We intend to do pre-scrutiny on that as early as next week. I don't think I'm saying too much or indeed anything surprising if I suggest that Councillor Pollock is extremely enthusiastic to come in front of us and talk about his vision. And it's obviously a major enough project to have an entire post attached to it, so it seems appropriate that we should look at it. And then secondly, it has already been mentioned, temporary accommodation is such an enormous issue, has such an impact on our budget, and there is much to understand about whether we are missing opportunities to do it better. So that we had intended that also would be on the agenda for our first meeting next week, but that hasn't proved possible because of officer availability. So we hope that will be at our second meeting. But both of those we would expect to take more than one meeting. In addition, slightly smaller packages, we intend to look at the compensation scheme. Oh, goodness. The compensation scheme for heating outages, which we understand hasn't been reviewed for some time, so we would like to do that. And of course, to check in on new council homes. In respect of community safety, members who served last year may remember that the timing of the Casey review was such that our commission did not have an opportunity to conduct very much scrutiny on that report. That's a substantial report. So we intend to focus on that in the first instance and pick up those areas that haven't yet been discussed, although I'm aware that I think it is in fact on the agenda for tonight that the council has already made certain commitments in respect of those findings. We also intend, as ever, because I believe it's been delegated from this committee, to interview the borough police commander and fire commander as usual.
Really good. Just on the temporary accommodation, I did mention at the beginning that we did say here that we did want to look at this. I'm just thinking.
Very happy to split it with you, with Os Chair, as makes sense. I imagine there's enough to go around.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So if we can sort of speak offline about that, and then we can divide it up between ourselves if everybody's happy with that. Okay, jolly good. Did any other members want to comment on anything or any other suggestions at all? No? Okay. The only point I just wanted to make, and it's not really for this meeting as such, but I've spoken to the chairs of environment and housing. We thought there had been an agreement whereby the community engagement element would be moved into housing again, but it doesn't appear to have seen the light of day at the annual council, so it's something that we're going to have to take back, and probably would it have to go to a council meeting or something?
It's us that establishes the commission.
Fine,
So
okay.
it's
So it would come back to our next meeting then, just to ratify the change in title. Yes, sorry.
I'm very happy to welcome the item back to housing chair. The co-opted members have been active and participating members of our commission all year in any case. The only thing that is just worth flagging is that I believe Councillor Newens's commission did make recommendations on this subject last year. So in the usual way, cabinet will report back. So we will I suppose just need to establish which commission that comes to. Those come to.
Yes, and obviously the report produced by Councillor Newton's commission will provide a firm foundation for the way forward. Yes.
Because it's
I-
crime disorders, you say, doing.
I believe the response to that is ask a busy woman.
I think councillor Cumbo's quite happy to retain that aspect.
Okay.
Thank you. So we've dealt with that item, and if we could move on then please. And the next item is item 6, which is the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny's Scrutiny Improvement Review, an action plan. As you know, we received a presentation from Ian Parry, who's the Centre's head of consultancy, at our April meeting. And we said that we would come back and give further consideration to the report. We've also circulated this time because Councillor Chamberlain was very active on his phone at the last meeting and noticed that guidance had been issued in relation to call-in procedures. But it was something which wasn't physically in front of us, and obviously none of us had had the opportunity to read it. So that has been included in the papers this time around. I don't intend to deal with the meat of it today, but rather consider it at our next meeting in October. And one of the reasons for this is I believe, and perhaps I don't know if it's still in the sausage machine, but I believe there may be another round of sessions with Ian Parry for all members of the council coming up in September. Is that correct, Everton?
So
Yes is the reply. Yes. So so we'll all have the opportunity to avail ourselves of further discussions and deliberation with the centre on the report. That's not to say that anything that's already been submitted. I know Councillor Monvisa submitted recommendations previously that they're still on the table, if I can put it that way. They're not going to drop off. And certainly the priority areas which have been identified in the report still remain the priority areas that we will consider come October. So that with the call-in procedure, as I say, we will give further thought and deliberation to come October. So if everybody's happy with that, we can move on to the next item. Yes.
I believe we need, however, to set in process today the review itself, the review of the review, if I remember correctly, so that when next time round we can continue with the process. We just need to have a formal agreement on that, if I remember correctly. Yes,
particularly with the call-in process. You're absolutely right. So if we can formally agree to review the review at our next meeting, that's all we need to decide this evening.
Hopefully Councillor Chamberlain will be there.
I'm sure he will be, and we look forward to it. Is that okay with everybody? We'll leave it on that basis. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I've also just been handed a note to say that Councillor Roberts has sent her apologies because she's having issues with her laptop. Oh, she tried to email, sorry, to say, yeah. But anyway, so if we can just note Councillor Roberts' apologies, please. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 7, which is Safer Southwark Communities. This was the motion referred from the Council Assemblies, agreed by the Cabinet. So I think you've seen in this separate paper, which is 6 pages long, that's been handed round. So if any member wants to discuss anything arising from this motion and the recommendations at this point, I did hear Councillor Cumbo say that her commission would be looking at this again. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel if it's going to go to the commission, but perhaps you'd like to just say a few words on it, if you may. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Indeed, we will be continuing to look at particular findings of the review, which cover a very wide range of issues. I think it's fair to say that much of the media coverage rightly focused on the issues around police officers themselves, the lack of accountability for those found to have abused their positions. But there was an awful lot more in there than that. And I think it's really important that people are clear about just how very, very wide ranging and concerning those findings were. Which actually is very well captured both in the motion and in the paper that we've been provided with. The one thing I do wish to note, and did note at the time when the motion was passed, is that one of the key findings that Baroness Casey made is actually that local authorities don't have sufficient powers to hold the Met to account in the first place. So I do think it's important that Southwark doesn't accidentally trap itself in a situation where we're pledging to carry out a level of scrutiny that Baroness Casey herself found we're not in a position to conduct, because that change needs to come from the top. So I simply wanted to put that on the record, that while my commission, I'm sure OSC also will be looking at a great many of these issues, and not just this year. I think this is going to be one of those really agenda setting pieces of work. I do think it's important to note that some of the improvements that we all wish to see will arise only as a matter of structural change, from which the senior political and police leadership they need to commit to it in order to secure that change.
No, I think you're absolutely right, but I think we have the opportunity to feed into that process and to produce examples from a Southwark wider basis in order to further those discussions at national level. So I think perhaps the best way then is if your commission looks at it in the first place, and then it can be presented to this committee, and we can then add further comment or recommendation to it. I mean, certainly there never seems to be a day at the moment without looking at the news and there's some sort of scandal, new scandal in the Metropolitan Police. So it's certainly a contemporary issue, and will be for some time, as you quite rightly say. And I mean, I remember when there was no political accountability at the local level for the Metropolitan Police at all in London, and it was only with the Home Office. There is a certain amount now shared with the Greater London Assembly and the Mayor, but the Home Office still has a major influence, unlike other police forces up and down the country. So that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. Great. Does any other members wish to make any comment on that? We're happy to progress that. Yes, Jane.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. Thank you. I absolutely agree. It's an enormous. There's two topics: Baroness Casey's report, plus the day-to-day policing of Southwark. Now, lots of us obviously looked at the report and were horrified, completely correctly. But your ordinary members of the public who are on the receiving end of some criminal activity are just concerned with what happened there and then. So to me, those are two very distinct and separate, and I'm not sure our commission could necessarily cover the both of them successfully. And I'm just wondering if some of it could maybe come to OSC as well, because I just think we could almost spend the whole year covering the police. I think. No.
You know what I mean? Sorry, I thought I said that before. I sort of indicated that the commission would initially look at it, but it would come back here for us to add further comment. I mean, obviously, there's a distinction between the organisation as an entity and its culture, and the way it, or should we say, how it recruits to that organisation, and then the sort of practical operational realities that most members of the public are involved in. So yes, I'm sure that will come through in whatever we discuss. Yes, Councillor Cumbo.
just to do some more agreeing on this committee. I think what's worth just noting in terms of the detail of the motion that everyone has in front of them is that all Southwark councillors resolved to send a joint letter calling on the Met to implement the recommendations of the review. Those go well beyond being able to deal with the in inverted commas bad apples, to the key points around the structure, but also the resourcing of the Metropolitan Police. And that's the sort of thing I mean, that is not within the control of any local authority, as a national government issue, and one on which urgent action is required. However, there are particular standalone aspects that I think our commission can look at and will look at, and that OSC might also want to pick out. But it's there's certainly no absence of issues to consider. Let us agree.
Yes, you can say that again. Right. Okay, great, good. So is everybody happy with that? Yeah. Excellent. And the meeting's finished. I'm starting to miss Councillor Chamberlain.